Hello, everybody. This is Tyler Preston 20. And right now I'm here with Faye. We're going to talk about The Witcher. And Happy New Year,
I'm
everybody.
I'm very excited for this live stream.
Oh,
I'm
yeah. I'm
very,
also
very
really
excited.
excited too because it's like the first time I've ever seen anything with The Witcher. So we have a pro right here and we have like a newbie right here. So we have two types of perspectives in this live stream. So be
Yeah.
prepared for that.
Mhm.
I guess the first question I'm gonna ask you is like, when were you first exposed to The Witcher?
No, 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 we're not doing it this way. We're getting your review and
My
then I go
review
into
first.
my
No,
thing.
no, no,
Yeah,
no,
your
no.
review first because like I will go off on The Witcher. I've followed The Witcher for such a long time. Every time, so I go to Comic-Con every single year with a friend. And every time we go to Comic-Con, she's always pissed because I'm always looking for Witcher things and she's just like, when are you going to give this up? I've never read these books. I've never heard of these games. All you do is obsess about this thing, and it's not even that popular. And that just like I'm a hipster for this entire franchise, so I need you as someone who's never been exposed to the world. You said that this was the first time you came across The Witcher as a Netflix series, which I had a lot of doubts about. But you said it was the first time you came across it, so I need the fresh, just no background knowledge of The Witcher impression of The Witcher.
Like basically, when I first saw The Witcher for the first time, I
Mm,
wanted something to fill the void for Game of
yeah,
Thrones because
right.
the first time I was ever exposed to this sort of dark fantasy kind of genre was, of course, Game of Thrones. I was like
Mm,
really late to Game of Thrones though. Like it was up to the seventh season or something that I decided
right.
to marathon the whole entire show onto
Mm,
my TV. And so
right.
I wanted to see something that I actually, felt the same kind of thing, like the same sort of genre. And so
Mm,
I saw a preview of it on like Netflix. I thought it was interesting. And plus I saw that Superman was gonna just play The Witcher, and so I
yeah,
figured
I didn't
why
know
the
that.
hell not? So why the hell not? So after I saw all the episodes like on Christmas and also my birthday, I thought it was a really fun show. And I'm not familiar
Mhm.
with the books, I'm not familiar with the games, but just judging it by itself, it was like a lot
Mhm.
of fun, like a lot of moments that I liked. Like the costumes are really cool, the
Yes.
setting is really cool. It's like I like how they managed to mix like the medieval setting for European country. I guess it was Poland or something that it was based upon, and how it
Mhm.
actually mixed like the magic and the spells and the dragons, and so it was fun.
Yeah. So is that your what did you think of the chronology? Because it's very like the show itself is very achronological. It goes back and forth in
It
time.
was
Was that
like very non-linear. What was it? The word like non-linear. Well, yeah,
mm,
that's the word. So it was kind of like at first it was a bit confusing towards the beginning because I
mm,
had no idea what was going on. But as
yeah.
soon as I saw the rest of the episodes, it kind of made a lot of sense. Because
Mm,
during the later episodes, it appears as though that the Witcher had like some sort of contact with the Queen, and
yeah.
she also wanted her daughter to get married off or something. But then it
Mm.
was like some sort of guy who had like this sort of hedgehog face. And it was like the classic kind of Beauty and the Beast kind of story
Yeah.
where what
It,
happened
it
was like the daughter, she falls in love with the hedgehog guy, and
mm,
at first, like, the queen, she did not approve of the marriage, but
yeah.
then it was some sort of, I forgot the term of it, but it was like destiny or something, like where they have some sort of duty to, fulfill like something that a person wants to,
It's
do.
law of surprise,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah. Law of surprise.
Yeah.
And so
So
he was using
it's
the
one of
law of
the
surprise to, marry the daughter. And then
mhm.
finally, she finally accepted the hedgehog guy as like the husband. And after she kissed him, he turned back to like a human. So that was pretty
Yeah.
cool. Yeah. But
It's
go on.
what did you okay, no, finish your point and then I'll ask you the next
Okay,
question.
okay, okay.
Yeah.
And then after we saw that part towards like the later episodes, it
Mhm.
also cuts back to like, that part where the daughter has to, leave from the castle because there
Yeah.
was like some sort of war going on. And
Mhm.
so the queen was like on her dying wish. And so
Mm.
what happened was that she requested that the Wisher looks after him. I mean, after her, sorry.
Yeah.
And so she died by just, going out the window. And the girl just left the castle. She had a horse. And it also,
Mm.
before she left, it was like a part where she just screamed and the glass also vibrated. So it kind of
Mm.
shows us that she has some sort of power where she just
Mm.
screams like stuff happens. There was like a bad guy who basically what happened was that he tried to capture the girl, but she started to scream, and there was like this
Yeah.
huge like line across the ground, and so the guy cannot get her. So she
Mm.
also meets some sort of, I guess, some sort of guy. I forgot the guy's name, and it was actually for the few episodes he didn't talk, but for the later episodes he did talk, and
Yeah.
so the whole season is basically about like the Wisher trying to find that girl from the castle. That way he could actually protect her. That's essentially
Mm.
what the whole season was about.
Okay.
Oh
You
my god,
done?
that was like a lot of stuff.
It's a lot of this. They
It's like a
covered a
lot
lot
of
of
stuff to
ground.
summarize.
They covered a lot of ground in 8 episodes. But
Yeah.
do you more or less have a grasp of who the main characters of the story are?
The main character obviously is the Wisher.
Hmm.
And then like there's a second character besides the Wisher. He was like I forgot the guy's name, but he was like a singer.
Yeah.
Like for the first few episodes, he started to make songs, and he also
Hmm.
followed like The Witcher like wherever he goes. Like that kind of whole entire dynamic between like the straight guy trying to play it cool and him trying to be
Hmm.
like the annoying jackass. It's kind of like the whole entire dynamic like for Shrek. And the movie Shrek,
Yeah.
it was like, Shrek was like the straight guy. He's trying to, play everything straight. Whereas Donkey was like, annoying and loudmouth. It's the same thing for like the two characters. So
Yeah.
that's like this, I think the second main character. And of
Hmm.
course, the third main character is like that hunchback girl. What was her name?
Yennefer?
Jennifer. It's like she's like the
It's
third main
Yennefer.
character. Jennifer.
It's
Jennifer.
not
Sorry.
Jennifer, it's Yennefer.
Jennifer. You see, I told you guys I'm a noob to this, so I'm sorry if I mess up
Mhm.
the names. I'm so sorry.
It's fine.
But it was like it's kind of funny because she was like the character where like nobody wanted to go near her because everybody thought she was ugly because she was like a hunchback. But as
Mhm.
soon as she had like that surgery, like everybody wanted to go to her. It's like the ugly duckling in a sense.
Yeah.
But towards like the beginning episodes, like she was like really, sad and depressed. She was
Mhm.
actually sold to like this sort of school where she learned how
Yeah.
to do like magic and stuff. And so she was like, like of all the classmates of the whole entire school, she was like the worst one. And so she always kind of felt sad. She always felt depressed. But every time she goes to like this place, some sort of cave, where it was like some other character. I cannot remember that guy's name, but it was like some sort of
Yeah.
guy that kept her like comfort or something. I forgot the guy's name. What was his
His
name?
name is Istrid.
Istrid. But
Mhm.
Estrid, he always, try to say kind words towards her. And of
Mhm.
course, one day she got the surgery to fix her back so that she's not a
Mhm.
hunchback. And she started to do some really strange stuff throughout the series. Like she could do like magic. There was also this one scene where it was like like an orgy with all these people just kissing, having sex at the same. What the?
Mhm. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what that's about,
What?
but she she's a very she's a very larger than life character.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Oh my god, it was so crazy. There was also this one episode where he went to like it was like The Witcher and a group of people. They went to
Yeah.
some sort of trail
Mm.
where they went to like I guess some sort of mountain. No, a
Yeah.
cave to find like a dragon. And it
Mm.
turns out that one of the people happens to be like a dragon.
Yeah.
So oh
So
man.
I mean, I don't know how much of a disclaimer. I mean, you basically just told the whole story
Oh
there, so
dang! It was like, oh my god.
spoiler alert. Um, but those so that entire season is based on two different books. It's based on The Last Wish, and I think it's called The Sword of Destiny. I've been a big Witcher fan for like 2 or 3 years. I've read all the books, I've watched all the gameplay. I haven't played the games myself, but the games were based on the book, and then now you have the show. So it's really difficult, in my opinion. So it's The Witcher has a lot to get, like a lot to lose, because it's being based on two different adaptations, as well as needing to fill the void of Game of Thrones, which we all know flopped at the end. It was a big
Yeah,
flop,
it was like I saw
especially
the
in the last
coffee
two
cup. Like we
seasons.
saw like the tweets with the coffee cups and the water bottles.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. The
oh
ending was very rushed. I mean, if they did the ending well, I don't think I'd be disappointed with it. But the ending was very, very rushed, and it just did not. It didn't fly well. Like throughout the entire of Game of Thrones, Daenerys has been the worst character for me. I know I said we wouldn't get off topic, but we're gonna get off topic. I hated Daenerys from like season 3. I was just imminently, anytime she came on screen, I just wanted to get out of the room, because I was just so angry at the character all the time because of how she would behave and how she would problem solve. So I've been waiting for the drama of Daenerys going mad for a really, really long time. And then when they rushed it, it was just disappointing. Didn't like it, hated it, absolutely. So with The Witcher, I was really, really scared that it just wouldn't live up to people's expectations, especially because of the Game of Thrones thing. Like many of the fans who like sort of forgot about Game of Thrones, or were like trying to fill that void, we're going to jump on this bandwagon because it's kind of a similar genre. You have a giant political landscape, you have dark fantasy, you have monsters, you have, not very good guy, bad guy, like clean cut characters. You have very, very like dirty, grungy characters. Like that's what they're like. And then you also have the fact that it's a book that has already been adapted into a series of games. Um, and there are differences. And for me, it was really difficult to walk into the first episode and just be like, oh, well, that's okay. That's okay. This is okay. Like there were so many things that I was nitpicking off the bat. And I really didn't like that I was doing that. So I had to turn it off. I had to go for a walk, and I had to come back and think this is its own thing, and I need to give it a fair judgment. So if you watch The Witcher, watch the first episode and then walked away, I would ask you to come back, because I would say from the second episode is where it really starts kicking off. The first episode is kind of slow, but I understand why it has to be. It's because people like
I
you
think most TV
haven't been
shows are
introduced
really
to
slow
it.
in the first episode. Like they always are
Yeah.
slow. It's like for Breaking Bad. I mean, I guess Breaking Bad was like the inception. It was not slow, but most TV shows start off really slow at the beginning
Mm,
because they have to establish the characters, they have to establish the universe, and
yeah.
so that's why they always tend to be slow. They're like not the
Yeah.
best episodes, and so the later episodes for TV shows are better and better as they go along.
Yeah, but what I liked about the show is that it highlighted some of the most sort of famous stories. While it didn't adapt it exactly, it did highlight some of the most famous stories of The Witcher, like you said, with the princess and the urchin, or he's known as Dooney in the show. And you had the Golden Dragon saga, that whole thing, the Last the Last Wish, sorry, with the Jinn and everything like that. Ciri and Brokilon, even though that's not how it goes in the story, I liked that they added those things in. The princess who was a monster, the Striga, um, Princess Ada, the whole Foltest thing. Like they embedded some of the best stories from those books into the show, which I really, really liked. I thought the casting was really well done. I've heard a lot of complaints about, right now she's a very minor character, so I'm not entirely sure why there's such huge complaints, but it's mainly because all of the characters aren't white, and that's what people have a problem with for some reason.
Oh my.
Um,
Okay.
so one of the witches, one of the sorceresses, Triss Merigold, in the games, and I think she's also described in the books as being fair-skinned and red-haired and all of that, and they completely changed her in the show. She's still gorgeous, so I don't understand why there's a problem with it. But there's been a lot of complaints because she doesn't look like how she's supposed to look. And I
Okay.
don't like that. And I like that I actually really enjoy that they added characters who weren't necessarily just white, you know, as a lot of dark fantasy shows do. So like the biggest thing for Lord of the Rings, which
You know,
personally I don't.
I was not even paying much attention to that. I was like just absorbing the show and seeing what I
I've just
like.
been reading.
I didn't care about the race aspect.
That's see, that's how I feel about it. That's you should just be able to absorb a show, especially when it's set in a fantasy world. You can just have you have dragons and you have all these things,
I mean,
but
it's fantasy with dragons and like magic spells. Like, why would you care about the race in a fantasy show?
I don't know. I don't know. And honestly, The Witcher is like one of those things. Like, I don't want to spoil the rest of the
Oh
story for
my.
you, but it is one of those dark fantasy genres that talks a lot about race anyway. Like, it was shown a little bit. There's very strong prejudice towards like elves and dwarves and stuff, and it's highlighted a lot within the Witcher story. So it doesn't really need like it's just really silly. But as someone who like avidly enjoyed the show and then wanted to see what other people thought about it, and then I just saw all these reviews about the fact that Triss Merigold wasn't white and she didn't have red hair. It was just like, okay, but what did you think of the actual show? Um, I mean, you know, it's just bizarre to me that
Mind
that was the
blown.
takeaway. Yeah, it's bizarre to me that that was the takeaway. And I'm really enjoying that a lot of the show isn't just white faces. You know, I'm glad that people of other races are in the show. It's just a fun. Like I never thought because Yennefer is another character who's meant to be like fair skin, dark hair, like all of that stuff. I'm glad that she's not that, you know, because she's way prettier, in my opinion, than I
Yeah,
could
it's
have
kind of
imagined.
hard to, find characters that look exactly like the book.
Yeah,
Because sometimes like authors they tend to go into a lot of details to make it, believable for the reader.
yeah.
And so
Well, I mean,
sometimes you cannot really find exactly what the person described for their book.
yeah. But also, this has a video game adaptation, so that's what people were going off as well.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, it's just a mess. I think there are some things that you can't change in terms of appearance. So if, for example, Geralt of Rivia looked completely different, I think I would have had more of a problem with it because his look is very much established. You know, with the white hair, the scar. Actually, I really hate that they didn't add his scar, but I mean, I'm letting it go. You know, the yellow eyes. He's actually meant to have cat eyes, because of the different mutations that witches have to go through. He's not technically human. He's like human 2.0. He's a superhero kind of thing. Um, and that something like that is established and you can't really change. Or like if they had decided to change Yennefer's eye color, Yennefer's eye color is like again one of her defining features. That would have been something that I would have had a problem with. But in terms of like skin color and things, like it shouldn't really matter that much. Um, it's just one of those things. But as someone who's been following like the books and the video games, while I haven't played them, I've watched them. Um, I'm really happy with how it turned out, and I was really, you know, scared that it would disappoint. I was really scared that it would disappoint. And there were a few people who, you know, I talked to about The Witcher who'd watched the first episode before me, and they were like, "Oh, don't hold your breath." And I was like, "Oh no, is it as really as bad as these people think it is?" But I thoroughly enjoyed it. I've watched it over a few times. Jaskier, or Dandelion as he's known in the books and the video games, just because Jaskier is the Polish word for, I think it's actually directly translates into buttercup, but in the English translation they changed it to Dandelion. The Bard, he's actually one of my favorite characters. A lot of the story, I think he's meant to be like the person who records the story. Um, so he meets Geralt of Rivia and he just follows him around to collect these stories and write songs about him. Um, and I'm really glad that they added that into the show because there aren't that many songs within the video games. For example, there's one or two here and there, but I like that they threw that in as almost like an aspect of the show. Like this is something that you can look forward to in the show. And also, I think that the acting and the script writing, like the banter really flows. I really like it. I like
Yeah,
that they
the
didn't
thing when
go.
I came to the show, I did not expect
Yeah.
it to be really funny at all. Like there was
Hmm.
this one scene where he was like fighting some other guy. He asked him
Yeah.
like if his mom fucked a goat or something, and he said like, "Did your mom fuck? What was it? I
A
forgot the joke.
snowman.
A snowman." That's not.
Yeah.
The show's
Yeah.
really
I
funny at
was
times.
The actual line from the book is, "Did your mom fuck a yeti?"
Ugh.
But I don't know why they changed it into snowman. I think yeti would have worked a bit better, but I guess some of the banter is some of it takes you out of it. Like there was one part where I think it was one of the scenes with Yennefer as a hunchback. It was one of the first scenes where she's like hiding and she takes someone's daisy, and he goes, "Roses are cliche." And I thought that doesn't sound like something that someone at the time would say at all, because that's when you made cliches. Like that's when cliches weren't cliches. So I thought that took away from it a little bit, but you kind of get away from that. It's their first season, so I don't think it's fair to be that hard. Also, it's a Netflix show, which was more than I was expecting from a Netflix show. Um, and I don't know, I think that also the fact that Henry Cavill, or Superman, which I later found out he was because I haven't seen those movies, um, he's actually a huge Witcher fan, which
Yeah,
I
when
can
I saw the
appreciate.
videos and the interviews and stuff, like he seems to be very knowledgeable, like you, about the show
Yeah,
and the book. So I was actually surprised how much he knew because usually, like the people who do like these adaptations don't know
mm,
about anything until they actually, start production. And
yeah,
so to see him actually know this kind of stuff beforehand actually
yeah.
helps a lot with the show, I guess.
Yeah, it really, really did. And like something that I told my friend when she started watching it, like the first thing I told her is the first thing you have to prepare for is that it's not chronological. Like it's gonna go back and forth through time. And she was like, oh, okay. And she said, "What else do I need to know about it?" And I was like, "You don't need to know anything else about it. It's just good. Just go ahead and watch it." Um, and it was really well done, and I kind of don't like the fact that it's only 8 episodes because I wanted more, but I also like the fact that they ended it off where it needed to end, and they didn't put too much in or take too much out. I think it was the same when I reviewed the Joker and I said that they didn't waste a minute. I feel like the same in this series where they didn't waste a minute, and if you go back and watch it, you'll see new things as it goes along because there's just so much going on. Um, and it was just nice to see, because in terms of the video games, the two that are acclaimed are the second one and the third one. The first one, while there is a video game, it's not as heavily acclaimed, and it's kind of really difficult to watch because it's really old. um, but it was nice to see an adaptation for the stories that were in The Last Wish and The Sword of Destiny, because in my opinion, those were the best books. They're the most best written, and the writer, he's Polish, so all of these books were originally in Polish and they've been translated to English. Um, and when you read them, it almost feels like the books are going nowhere. It just feels like a collection of stories. And the way that it's sort of shown on screen, the way that the stories are told on screen, is kind of how the same way that he writes is very non-linear. If memory serves, I don't know. I haven't gone revisited them in a while, but from what I remember, the stories aren't chronological. So when it kind of wraps up at the end, it all ties together and it just leaves you with a satisfying,
I'm
oh,
kind of
that's what all
curious,
this
like,
was
how long
for.
are those books, by the way? Like, are they like Harry Potter long?
I think the first book, so The Last Wish and The Sword of Destiny, I don't think they're that long. I think they're a few hundred pages long.
Okay.
They were so I haven't had much time to read in like the last 5, 6 years, I want to say. And these were the few books that I could get through because not because the writing is easy, it's because there's so much left to be wanted. Like you want to explore this world, you want to know what's going on in all these. And something else that I said was this: they've only scratched the surface of the world. Like there's so many monsters, there's so many like locations and places, there's so much political intrigue, in terms of like this new sort of kingdom that's taking over everyone. There's so much to do with that. So Nilfgaard, if you've ever played Skyrim, it's kind of like the imperial takeover, or if you're a history fan, it's kind of like how the Romans took over Europe. That's what it's meant to symbolize. And I think the Nilfgaardians are supposed to be slightly more communist as well. I'm not entirely sure. But there's all these, and it's very heavy on social commentary as well. Like I said, with the, not necessarily, I wouldn't call it racism because those races don't exist in our world. But there's definitely like
Like
this
prejudice
social
or
commentary
something. Yeah.
on prejudice and discrimination. It talks a lot about it. It speaks a lot to human nature, and there's also this occurrence called the conjunction of the spheres. So it has like an alternate history line. So humans aren't actually native to this world; they came through a different dimension. So there's dimensions. And yeah, and there's this other aspect that you'll be introduced to way later. Like it's way later in the story. There's so much story, and that's what I'm really, really excited about. And I'm
Yeah,
glad
I
that they
believe
haven't
that
just like,
Netflix just announced like the second season. It's gonna come out, I believe, next year. And I guess everything is kind of depends on the first season because I'm pretty sure like a lot of people saw the first season, so we don't have to worry about like the upcoming seasons because I think it's pretty much a success right
yeah,
now. And
yeah.
plus, they
And
have
I was
the
like, so dark fantasy is also not very easy to televise. So I follow quite a few different dark fantasies. So Game of Thrones was one that I didn't get into because I didn't read the books prior to watching the show. I have read all the books now, but it's, if in my opinion, I'm not a huge Martin fan. I don't think that he writes particularly to my taste. I think that he writes his characters very well, and in terms of the show, up until like the last few seasons, my favorite character was Jaime Lannister because his arc was the most interesting. But it's really, really difficult to adapt dark fiction because some of the themes are so dark. One of the other big things that I follow is Berserk, and Berserk's been adapted quite a few times and not very well. Um, and it's one of my favorite mangas, and one of my favorite arcs is called the Lost Children's arc, where there's a lot of children who die and a lot of children who get raped and things like that. So
oh.
it's just not, and I understand why things like that can't be televised. That's never been adapted, even though things after that, like after that arc in the story, have been adapted. But in my opinion, it's one of the most important arcs in the story. So I don't know how people get away with not telling that part of the story.
I guess
Um,
the only kind of way it could possibly be televised is like, through Netflix, but otherwise, I don't think most
yeah,
primetime TV would probably show that at all.
no, 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 no. It's
No.
way, way too dark. And because it's a manga, you'd think that in an anime it might appear, but I doubt that it will ever be televised just because of
Yeah.
how dark it is. And also because a lot of dark fiction is quite edgy in its social commentary. It's not like other kinds of fantasy, which are very like, has like this really, really big opening and then like a happy ending to tie it up at the end. That's not necessarily how dark fantasies go. So it's just nice for me to see how it's been televised.
Yeah,
Um,
like, trying to adapt like long books like those takes like a
mhm,
lot of effort. Like, I guess like when Peter Jackson first did like the Lord of the Ring movies, like I cannot imagine like the amount of stress behind the process to adapt what they use for the books into like the
yeah.
movies. Or like when they make like Game of Thrones, how they could adapt like what's in the books to the screen. And so I just cannot imagine like, the being the
Well,
person in charge of everything behind that. So
from what I researched, they actually did release a Witcher movie in Polish because that's where it's originally from. It didn't do very well at all. I don't intend on watching it. I haven't watched it. I don't feel like being angry at anything right now. But it didn't do very well. And Netflix actually at the beginning wanted to make this a movie, which would seem impossible because of how much material there is. um I think if Lord of the Rings was, in this time where they could potentially make it into a series, I think that Peter Jackson would probably opt to make it a series because of how long it is, and how detailed and
I
multifaceted it is.
think there
It's
was
like
like an
so big.
announcement a while back that Netflix might do a TV series for Lord of the Rings, actually.
I don't know how I feel about that because it's already, in my opinion, it's already been done. But in terms of the Lord of the Rings, like I said, I watched it over Christmas. It's our tradition to watch it over Christmas again. And it's always going to be something close to my heart. It's just a nostalgic piece that I like, revisiting from time to time. But there are a lot of two-dimensional characters in the Lord of the Rings. A lot of two-dimensional characters, namely the elf and the dwarf, who just seem to be the elf
Oh,
and
it's
the
on
dwarf.
Amazon Prime. I'm sorry, it's not Netflix. Amazon Prime. Sorry. Okay.
Okay, Amazon Prime
Yeah.
isn't. I don't know. I think they've had a
Yeah.
lot of hit and miss shows as well. Um, but it's from when you revisit the movies, there are a lot of two-dimensional characters, and I feel as though if Peter Jackson had made the series, I think that he could have been able to expand on those characters a bit more. Also, maybe make Frodo a little less annoying. But every time that man is on screen, I'm just like, get out of the shot. Like
Yeah.
I don't want to see him. He's just so annoying. I mean, I understand why he has to be, but it's just
So,
every
what
time
would
he's
you
on
rate
screen.
like the Richard TV show, like out of I guess 10?
I think for the TV show, it met all the expectations I kind of had for it. I would
Okay.
say it's like a 9 out of 10. Um, as I said, the first episode, like I didn't know if I wanted to tap out. Like I was thinking, should I leave now? Like should I spare myself the anger? But I went back in and I liked that they branched out on Yennefer's story because Yennefer's story is actually not one that is described in the books or in the game. So it was nice to see that, and it put her in a different light for me because Yennefer's a character that I've never really liked, but it put her a whole new perspective on her, and I really liked that.
Yeah, I
And
think like her character development from like Hunchback to like, Supreme Witch is like
yeah,
crazy. It's like the most development I've seen for a single character for one
yeah,
season than like most shows that I've seen actually. It's crazy.
it was very very well done, very very well done. And then especially in the episode where she's transforming and you know which the witch is fighting the Striga at the same time, and the stories that sort of parallel each other, the way that it was shot, the way that it was written, because when the Striga is turning back into a human and Yennefer is turning into this beautiful powerful sorceress, that's where the scenes are cutting from back and forth. And I think that that was really well done. I really appreciate the acting. I appreciate the people that were cast. It was really well done. I don't know what else to say about it,
Yeah,
really.
I'm gonna give it yeah, a 9 out of 10 too. It's also really
Mm,
good. And now
I
I'm kind of
really
curious.
enjoyed it.
I'm kind of curious about like the video games and also the books. So I'm probably gonna spend my free time reading the books and the games if I get a
Yeah,
chance to, and then of course watch the new season. And we could probably
yeah.
talk about the book someday.
It would be good. I need to reread them because it's been a while since I've read them, and I've like the show. Like I want to see what they've changed. I'm not necessarily angry about the changes. I think the show is the show, and the books are the books, and the games are the games.
Maybe
The
after I read the
game,
books, we could probably talk about the differences between the show and the books after I read them.
yeah, and I also understand why they had to change some things just to make it. I think for continuity. Well, actually, the books are quite, in terms of continuity, they're quite good. They fit very very well with each other. They mesh very very well, especially since they're not completely linear. Um, but there are a few things that they had to change, just I think to make it easier for the audience to understand, because there's a lot of names, a lot of places, a lot of things. Um, I think that the law of surprise is one of the most difficult things to explain, because it's not well explained in the show, but I also don't think it needs to be. I think that you just have to take it for what it is because it's a different world that you're being
Yeah,
exposed
basically,
to.
like anybody who has like some sort of favor done towards them, they could, return the favor. That's what I
Well,
got from the show.
so let me explain it
Yeah.
as easily as I can. So
Okay.
the law of surprise, which the reason that witches use it is because they're killers for hire. They fight these monsters and they kill these monsters for money. But people don't always have money to pay these witches because there's often peasants who are disturbed by these monsters and not necessarily the lords and the ladies. And initially, when the witches were set up as an order, because they're a class of warrior monk. That's what they were called back in the days of yore. When they were originally founded, they were founded on tenets and principles and things like that. And their whole thing is that they protect humanity. So instead of accepting payment from these people who couldn't pay them, they would invoke the law of surprise. Um, and what the law of surprise basically is that it's something that you give someone that you didn't necessarily know that you had. And that's vague on purpose because most of the time the law of surprise was a child. And the reason that the witches would want a child is so they could train them to be witches. Um, because people wouldn't readily give their sons to this order because only 4 out of 10 make it through the trials. Because they have to go undergo all these mutations and all these magic things and all this, even just the first stage of just like the diet to strengthen their bodies and change them, and the rigorous training is really really difficult. So people wouldn't willingly give their children, but if the Witcher had done this task and they invoked the law of surprise, it could mean that the year they came back, they could take a child. And in the original story, that's why the Witcher invokes the law of surprise after he saves Dooney at Callant's Pavetta's wedding. So that's why. I mean, I think they put it in a more fanciful way in the show just to make it a little bit easier to understand. Because I don't think that an audience who's, let's say, coming from Game of Thrones, which is very much a mainstream audience, would just happily understand that idea and be like, yeah, of course, take your son's kid. Why not? So I think they put it in a more fanciful way. Um, and I don't think that in the books that Geralt immediately knew that Pavetta was going to have a kid. I think he finds out a few years later, and then he comes to retrieve the child. Callanth turns him away, and then he comes back another time, um, or something of that kind. But essentially, what the law of surprise is that it's a tool of destiny. Destiny is a huge theme within the show and within the books and within everything.
It's not just like
It's a
destiny, but it's
driving.
also like, choosing between one extreme or the other extreme. Like there was like moments in the
What do you
show
mean?
where he had to choose like one side or the other side or no
Yeah,
side.
that's a big thing as well. But Destiny, if you read the books, is a huge. It plays a huge part. It's one of the reasons why Yennefer's in love with him. It's one of the reasons why he has Ciri. Like Destiny is just something that binds the story together. And the law of surprise, it's not meant to be denied because it could incur the wrath of Destiny. So one of the reasons why Pavetta and Dooney die later in the story, as within the series right now, they're canonically dead. One of the reasons they die is because they don't give up Ciri to the witches. Um, or it's said anyway that destiny intervened, and that's why they were shipped, wasted at sea or whatever. So it's like these large concepts that they've kind of made really bite-sized and easy for people to consume. I like that. I like that they've done that.
I guess one final thing I want to say, and again, it's like pretty much off topic here, but I
Mm.
think the guy who was playing The Witcher, what was his name?
Henry Cavill,
Yeah, Henry. Like I think he might be a good James Bond.
you think he'd be a good James Bond?
Yeah, he has the look and everything.
Yeah, when I first saw him, I had so many doubts because The
Uh,
Witcher is meant to be very like
yeah.
broody and like disheveled, and he's not meant to look very good, but
Yeah.
he almost fits him to a T, like almost fits him to a T, which is more than I could have hoped for. And I think he really embodied those mannerisms. Like in terms of how many lines a lot of main characters have, he has very few lines, which is befits Geralt perfectly. um, I liked the person that they cast as Dandelion or Yaskier. I think he was a perfect fit, and I watch the interactions between them back and forth, and it just works so well in terms of how the books were written and also how the games have been composed. Um, like there are moments when they argue, moments where they banter, moments that they fight, moments that they just giggle and have a laugh. It works very well, and I really like that
And I guess
dynamic.
one final thing I want to talk about is like you mentioned like there was like a movie that was done in Poland. Do you know if it's on Netflix?
I doubt that Netflix would want the rights to that movie. It's a Polish movie. I think it's just called The Witcher. I'm not sure, or The
Okay.
Last Wish. Um, I don't know if I want to watch it. There's a part of me that just wants to see it just for the sake of seeing it.
It's just the same for
Um,
seeing it, yeah.
yeah. I mean, why not? I mean, I can't really lose anything but time.
Yeah.
Um, but Yeah, I've heard that it got pretty bad reviews, like really bad reviews, which you would get if you were trying to, consolidate that huge story, that huge world into a movie.
Right. So I'm gonna give it like a 9 out of 10, and I
Yeah.
guess that's like our chat about The Witcher. So, Faye, where can people find you on YouTube and other social media accounts?
You can find me on YouTube. I'm Faye the Most Gracious. My name's on screen. And I'm on Twitter as well. So that's where mainly you can find me. I have Instagram and I have Facebook, but I never use it.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna contact me through either Twitter or through my YouTube channel. I don't typically do reviews, but
The only time she does reviews is with me.
yeah, it seems like a fun way to go about it. Um, I actually, I actually might review Messiah on my channel because I think that it's a bit more on brand, but it's so difficult getting through it. Like it feels like a chore because it's so slow, and I really don't like the dialogue. The dialogue is so laborious and so cringe, and so much of it is just like, okay, can we move
I
on
haven't seen
though?
Messiah, so I might watch that. So we could probably talk about Messiah next time.
Okay, yeah, we can do that.
And
But before we close off, are there any questions you have about The Witcher? Because I found that a
I
lot of
think
my
you
friends
cover
who
like
were,
every single aspect. So
yeah,
yeah, you cover everything. You cover like the law of surprise. You cover like the characters, their motivations, and everything. I think you covered everything.
okay, all right.
You
Because
know your stuff.
a lot of my friends who weren't involved in The Witcher had loads of questions for me. I just all my social media has been blocked with questions about The Witcher, and they're
I
just
think
like, why does this
you could just
happen?
link them this video to answer their question.
Yeah, basically. Um, But yeah, the biggest question has been, what is the law of surprise about? Like, we just don't understand it.
Okay, and you guys can find me on, of course, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook at Tyler Preston 20. And until next time, guys, take care. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.